Hello, everyone. We are live, and today is Thursday, and today is interview day. And today happens to be January 27th. I cannot believe that we're almost at the end of January in 2022. Can you guys believe that? It's going, and going. Time just kind of flies. Anywho, thank you for being here. If you are joining us live today, down in the comment, hashtag live, or if you're seeing the replay, hashtag replay. And also, if you would like to comment, there's a strip above that give a StreamYard permission to use your name. Otherwise, you will come out as Facebook user. And we would love to know who's with us so we can interact with you. We love to interact with our audience. And if you do not want to comment and you just want to react, then, we prefer those hearts. We love the hearts. So give us a lot of hearts. Okay, so usually what happens here is I tell you, my audience, what my wonderful guests, and I have in common. Well, number one, we're both entrepreneurs. Two, we're both very much into self development, and you will find out why that is. We have the same world coach class, Maya Comerota. All right. And then, of course, we met online. We met in one of Maya's events. Now, Laurette, it's not Loretta, it's Laurette. Laurette is an energy worker, and she is a licensed NLP. That's a neuro-linguistic programming associate practitioner, and she's also a certified life coach. And the great thing about Laurette is that she specializes in disordered eating. And I've never had a guest who's taken care of this disordered eating and bulimia. And the reason that this is such a passion for her is because she has come from that background. So she knows what she's talking about. So, without any further ado, let us meet Laurette Smith. Hi, Laurette. How are you?
Hey, Lucy. Amazing. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited about this.
Hey, Laurette, as you know, and I forgot to tell my audience, but my audience knows I'm coming in from Mexico. Now, where are you right now? Where are you coming in from?
I am above the Pacific Ocean, not in New Zealand, which is where I'm from, but in Seattle, Washington.
In Seattle. Okay, so you were born in New Zealand and
Yes.
now you're in Seattle, Washington. Now, how did that happen? Can you tell a little bit of that history?
Oh, it's my husband. My husband was a missionary's kid in Africa and Papua New Guinea, and he went to American boarding school. So he always wanted to live in America. And so about 7 years after we got married, we moved here and then we stayed. So we've been here for 25 years. Oh, hi, Therese.
Hi, Therese.
Hi, beautiful.
So she just gave StreamYard permission. Okay, we'll come right back. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. I'm always so happy to see Therese because she's so supportive.
Mm-hmm.
So okay. So it had to do with your husband who came from a missionary family.
Yes.
Was he born there in Washington?
He was born in New Zealand, but he grew up overseas with Americans. So he'd always, and our children are all, I mean, 2 were born in New Zealand, 2 were born here. But almost all my parenting has been done in New Zealand. So my kids are very American.
Okay. So how many kids are we talking about?
Just 4.
4.
Yes.
Just 4. Okay.
I wanted more. It didn't work. But anyway.
Did you really?
Yeah.
So what age range are we talking about here?
20 to 27.
Okay. So any married children yet or?
One divorced.
Okay.
So he was married. The rest of them are single. Yeah.
Okay, great. Can you tell me why, your background in New Zealand? Could you tell me what it was like to grow up in New Zealand? I mean, for us, New Zealand is one of those places I always think of greenery and beautiful country, and I want to visit. Sometimes so you miss it a little bit, right? So,
Yeah.
could you tell us about how it was growing up in New Zealand for you?
It's a super chill place to live. I was at the beach constantly. I hardly ever wore shoes. The police don't carry guns. It's just, it's the whole country is very much low key. In fact, one time when I took my third child there and we were at the beach and there were like 15 teenagers sitting around and they were so used to seeing teenagers noisy. These teenagers are just sitting there at the beach, like totally chill, and they couldn't believe it. Like, how can 15 teenagers be together and not make any noise? They actually took a picture of it. They were so entranced by it. It's a very different lifestyle. I mean, it's an island.
Right.
So, yeah, very different lifestyle.
So did you? So tell me, you were educated there, and so obviously, obviously not obviously, but you met your husband, I'm supposing, there.
Yes.
And then you moved, right? So I know that part of your background was very difficult for you. There was a lot of sexual trauma. And that is why you are so passionate about what you do today. Would you mind telling us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in a very, very religious home, Christian home, but kind of tight in that way. And my parents, I mean, it was the 70s as well. So like nobody asked anything about anything in those days. And my grandfather had come to live with us because his wife was dead. And I knew that he was a really unhappy man. And so I made it my goal in life to make him happy. And that's when I went into his room one day and he started raping me. And that went on until I was almost 11 years old. And so it ended up defining basically my entire childhood. There's a lot more to it that I won't get into, but it ended up defining my childhood. And it was the same year that he started raping me was the same year that my oldest brother started calling me Fatness Explosion. Second oldest brother, sorry, started calling me Fatness Explosion just to tease me, but I linked the two together.
Right.
And from age 7, I was dissociated from my body, hated my body. I had blood curling nightmares and my mother didn't know why. I didn't tell my parents until I was 31 about my grandfather. So, love you. Hey, Therese, do you like my jacket? Sorry, I just bought this with her last week.
I love your jacket. It looks great.
So, yeah, I was dissociated from the time I was 7 years old from my body. And it's taken me, I'm 54. So it's taken me decades to get back into my body and come back to a place of understanding who I was created to be and actually becoming grateful for all of the trauma that I went through. I mean, I have nothing but kindness in my heart for my grandfather. Totally, that is true healing, where you get to the stage where you don't even blame somebody, so you don't even need to forgive them because you just see things in a whole different light. And at the same time, it really messed me up. I had severe debilitating PTSD for decades.
Wow. Well, I'll say, because from the sexual trauma happened from 7 to 11, you mentioned, and then from 11 till you were about 31. That's 20 years of you hiding, keeping it inside. Now, Laurette, I know that these things are deep wounds, and it's very hard to heal these deep wounds. So most often we need people to help us. Did you seek help? How did you help yourself?
So I really believe in therapy, but not all therapists are created equal. And so I went through a number of therapists. One of them did experimental brain stimulation therapy on me, which actually ended up giving me a breakdown. So that wasn't good. I had others that they just didn't know what to do with me. They just didn't know what to do with me. And so it was actually one night in the bathroom, because every night when I went to bed, I had visions of killing myself and hated myself so much. And I was actually sleeping on the bathroom floor. I was too scared to sleep in bed with my husband. So I slept on the bathroom floor for 3 years. And every single night I would try and think of a reason to not kill myself. And this particular night was so bad that I saw my suicide, and I saw who was going to find me the next morning. And I saw a vision of my funeral. And I realized if I don't do something, I'm not going to survive. I'm not going to survive this. I mean, the therapists that I've seen, that all said, how are you still alive? Like, how have you not killed yourself by now? What a thing to say,
No,
right?
I know.
What a thing to say.
I know.
And so,
Not thank you for being here and I can help.
I know, right? And so this particular night, I got up off the bathroom floor and I looked in the mirror, and I just this question came from deep inside of my spirit, and I just asked myself, "What are you feeling?" And I waited, and I knew what I was feeling was the word ravaged. And out of that one question changed my life. It's actually the 6-step process that I use with the women in my programs to heal from emotional and sexual trauma. This beautiful 6-step process. I had no idea at the time that what I was doing was neurolinguistics, which is the language of the emotional brain. When I did my training later on, I was like, oh my gosh, that's why that worked. Like, because I learned to speak the language of the emotional brain from deep inside of me. And then I finally found a therapist that was like life-changingly helpful. She's the first therapist. I walked into her office and I said to her, I want to die. I want to kill myself. And she didn't take my hand and start crying and say, oh, I'm sorry. She said, of course you do. Why would you want to live like this? Of course. And I'm like, oh my gosh, somebody finally gets what I'm actually saying. Because when we get into that state, we don't really want to die. We want to live.
Right.
We want completely the opposite, but we want to die to the way that we're currently experiencing life because it's so painful. And that's where my eating disorder came out of. I was so miserable. I had such severe panic disorder and PTSD that the only way that I could cope was by eating and drinking an inordinate amount of food in the evenings until I got numb, and then would throw it all up.
So one was a result of the other. So is that pretty common? I mean, I don't know what the statistics are, but we know that sexual trauma is, there's the Me program that became
It's
very,
3 out of every 5 women.
wow,
Yeah,
wow, wow,
it's
wow, wow.
monstrous. Yeah.
We're talking about the United States or world?
Global. Hi,
Global.
Colleen, by the way. Sorry,
I
just saw
know.
Colleen.
Thank you, Colleen, for being
Hi,
here.
gorgeous.
So we're talking about bulimia because that's what happened to you. So very often there's an eating disorder that follows a sexual trauma, because I'm thinking of a friend of mine who doesn't call herself bulimic, but I can see it's not like she's throwing up, but her whole life has been worried about her weight, and she doesn't need to worry about her weight.
Yeah.
And so it's almost tied, one to the other. Am I making a good kind of
Yeah,
connection
you
there?
are. I mean, most of the bulimics that I've dealt with, bulimics and anorexics, have, if not sexual trauma, then extreme emotional trauma. And I didn't develop bulimia until my 40s. So my eating disorder started at 17. With me just not eating. I just stopped eating because I didn't want it. Basically, I was told you can't have any fat on your body at all. And so I just stopped eating. And what I was told is if you get too skinny, just eat a little bit and add a little bit more weight. But I got terrified of any fat. And so I stopped eating. And what happens when you stop eating is your body starts breaking down. And I had huge dark circles under my eyes. And by 19, it was actually one night in the kitchen, my mother walked up to me and she looked me in the eyes and she said, you look sick. You need to start eating.
Oh, so she knew.
She knew I wasn't eating anything. So she said, you need to start eating. And so I did, but because I didn't have anybody to teach me about healthy eating, and because I had all of these internal issues going on, and I desperately wanted to be accepted by my family, where I'd been called fatness explosion. It was like a joke.
Yeah.
So not funny, right?
Yeah,
So not
funny at
funny.
all.
No, I got called FE for short, for fatness explosion. I desperately wanted to be accepted by my family, that I had decided, and this is what we do when something happens, we make sense of it in our brain in a way that creates this map in our brain where this is the lens that we now see all of life through. So
Right.
I was convinced the way to be accepted by my family was to be skinny. And so that started yo-yo dieting. Right. And there's, probably 50% at least of women in the world experience yo-yo dieting at
Right.
some stage in their life. It's because, you go on a diet, you buy this cookie cutter program and you do all the stuff and yes, and you lose the weight. And then it's like, well, but I'm not happy. I mean, or you want to lose more. There's a whole actual neuroscience reason behind that, but I won't go into that at the moment. But or what normally happens is there's a part of our memory, our emotional brain, our emotions that needs that food for comfort, right? That's why it's called comfort food.
Right.
Because we're not addressing that part, and this is what I teach women in my programs, because we're not addressing that need inside of us, that emotion will grow and grow and grow. And as we lose the weight and stick to this plan and we're hiding it more and more and more, it gets louder and louder and louder until it begins to take over. And all of a sudden, we don't know we're blowing our diet. That's what self-sabotage is.
Wow.
Self-sabotage is actually a need coming up and saying, can I have some attention, please? I'd like to be resolved here. All it wants is to be resolved.
Right.
But we call it sabotaging our progress. And it's not the real progress. The real path lies through going through that self-sabotage road. And that's what I learned to do. And it changed everything for me almost overnight. Once I learned how to actually speak to my emotions in a completely different way, how to speak to my inner critic in a completely different way, because I no longer needed to drown her out or numb her out with food. So my yo-yo dieting kind of got worse and worse and worse as the years went on. I've been on so many diets. Oh my gosh. And then I started over exercising. So I would exercise for 3 or 4 hours at the gym
Every day.
After having a big meal. I'd go in and exercise. Exercise is actually, over exercising is one of the forms of bulimia. There's exercising, there's using laxatives, there's intermittent fasting. And I don't mean just the regular intermittent fasting. I mean the intermittent fasting that I used to do, where I wouldn't eat for 2.5 or 3 days. And then there's purging is the fourth version. And so I'd never used laxatives, but I kind of went through all of them until I was literally purging everything I was only eating intermittently during the week.
So most people know, associate bulimia with purging, I think, more than anything else. So,
yeah.
And Lady Di had that problem. So did she have something special too? Do you know what happened to her? I mean, obviously I know what happened to her because, it was a lack of, well, I'm not even going to go in there because I'm not a psychologist,
Right.
but I know that she was bulimic.
Yeah. Well, you can imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, not just her upbringing, but the pressures of royal family life. I still remember the day that she died. We were in Oregon at a campsite. Yeah, I love her to pieces. It's devastating to me that somebody could live so much in the public life, but it's what it's like, right? Famous people.
So that's my point. It can happen to, royalty can happen to. So it knows no class,
Oh, absolutely. And I know a lot of bulimics were like I was in complete denial. Denial. I was just like, it just makes sense to throw up because I ate too much.
Wow.
And I feel kind of sick. And so if I throw up, then I'll feel better. But that's how I ended up doing research online, how to be a better bulimic.
And oh my God, I didn't mean to laugh, but it's like, oh.
It's bad. I actually learned there's particular tricks that you can use to, but my hair started falling out, my skin, I started aging so fast, and my body lost the ability to withdraw nutrients from food. And I had no hunger or fullness cycles anymore, because even if you're not bulimic, when you overeat or binge eat, you fill your body way past the body of natural fullness, that your body ceases to understand what fullness feels like. And of course, for a bulimic, when you then purge, your body felt full, and so your stomach acids are all going, but now you have no food to digest. So it really messes up your system. So people say, it's easy, just eat when you're hungry and stop eating when you're full. For anybody who's had chronic overeating problems, for anybody who has done any form of a lot of forms of yo-yo dieting, especially where you're kind of starving yourself a lot of the time, your hunger and fullness cycles get so screwed up that you need to teach your body what it's like to actually eat normally. And that is a process.
That's amazing. So at what point did you want to, you because you're a lifetime coach now, and you have been for quite a few years, right?
Almost 18 years.
18 years.
Yeah.
So at what point did you decide that, you know what, I've had it. There's enough women, there are too many women out there that need help. I'm just, this is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to become a life coach. I mean, 18 years ago you started. What were the first steps that you took?
My husband and I we were actually care pastors in a very, very large church,
Hmm.
and we actually started off running groups for sex addicts and for wife support, and then I was running addiction recovery groups. It's actually how I got started, which is kind of crazy that I jumped in the deep end, but it was really what I felt called to do. And I'm a curriculum writer, so I homeschooled my children. I wrote almost all of their curriculum all the way through graduation, except for math and science. From like grade 9, I didn't write science. I used curriculum for that, but everything else I actually wrote and designed myself, specific to each child.
Mm.
And so every time I would, even 18 years ago when I started off running addiction recovery groups, I was writing my own material because I knew what it was like to recover from something, even though I still had an eating disorder at the time. And that's one of the things that gets really painful when you are helping people in an area and you're not seeing that freedom yourself. So I was helping all these women. They were having these beautiful, amazing transformations, and here am I. It's like physician heal thyself, right? Not that I'm a physician, but that old thing. And so I took a break. Actually, my children asked me to take a break because working with addicts is very time consuming. And I had 4 children, and the 2 boys were already in high school. We were traveling the country with them, competing in team policy debate. So they asked me to stop because they needed more of my time. And so I did, and I started running parenting training groups instead. I started teaching people how to homeschool, how to write their own curriculum. And so my coaching changed tacks for a number of years until I graduated my last child. My youngest child went into high school for 2 years, grades 9 and 10, and then he went off to college early. He kind of got bored in high school. And so that's when I started working with women again on the areas that I really wanted to work on, and started focusing on eating disorders. I call it disordered eating instead of eating disorders because I'm not a therapist, and
Okay.
and eating disorder is a diagnostic term, and so that's why
Very
I call it,
interesting.
that's why I call it disordered eating. Yeah,
Yeah, I had to think about that when I said it,
yep,
disordered eating.
disordered eating. Yeah, I just
You
that,
might have seen the look on my face. I went,
yep.
I
Where
say
was that? Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So that's very interesting. So I know that, well, now I know why you have written so many programs. I mean, you are
I
an
love it.
experienced curriculum,
Yeah.
course writer. So now what was the very first program that you wrote? I think it was called Healing Your Emotional Brain.
So that was a couple of years ago. Yeah, called Healing Your Emotional Brain. And that night that I was talking about, that I got up in the mirror and I asked myself, what am I feeling? And I got the word ravaged.
Hmm.
Um, and I started working with that emotion, and I came out with a 6-step process on healing a deep-seated traumatic emotion. And that 6-step process is what was in Healing Your Emotional Brain. That's the process that's in that course. That's one of the main courses I run. Yeah, that is not on disordered eating. That's
Okay.
on trauma, on emotional and sexual trauma.
Okay, so you have several programs. Then you have your program that deals with the sexual trauma, and then you have the program that deals with the disordered eating. Am I?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So the trauma one, well, actually, I use neurolinguistics in both of them, but I'm a very intuitive worker,
Mhm.
and I've actually been working with energy since I was 7 years old. And so I actually step into people's memories with them, not through hypnotherapy, just through neurolinguistics, step through into somebody's memory with them and help them guide it through, because we can't change what happened, but we can change the way that the memory sits in the emotional brain to stop it
Right.
causing pain. in the present tense. So that I actually do that in both of my programs, because I find it's a really effective way to help women start to live present and to start to allow that emotion to complete its journey within them so it can resolve. Because so often we want to change, we want to resist, we want to stop. I find completing the emotions journey to be so much more gentle toward ourselves, and the emotion just wants to move. It's emotion, right? It's energy and motion from Latin.
Emotion, right?
It wants to move. It doesn't want to stay stuck.
And I just love that word allow. You know, we
Yeah.
just don't allow ourselves to do much of anything in life. It's like, you know, we used to, I used to, when I was young, I used to, it was never a problem. I just allowed myself to do everything. And then all of a sudden, you know, you start your working career, and then you're not allowed to do anything at one point.
Okay, I've got to get this in here. Okay, so let me tell you about this. So, you know, you've got your thinking brain and you've got your emotional brain, right? The prefrontal cortex and your amygdala. In between them, you've got this little piece of the brain called the nucleus accumbens. The nucleus accumbens is the part of the brain that connects these two, right?
Right.
And it's also helps your thinking brain, your prefrontal cortex, to become open to new ways of thinking, right? Open to new perspective, open to new paradigms. So it's a really important, this tiny little part of your brain is really important if you want to make any kind of transformation in your life.
Right.
There is one way to activate this part of the brain, and you just hit on it, and that's play. Just allowing yourself, right? Allowing yourself to have fun, because as kids, you know, kids are constantly curious, right? They're constantly learning and finding new ways to think about things and expanding, you know, and it's because they're always at play. And then as we get older, we stop playing, this part of the brain shrivels up, and all of a sudden we're locked into these ways of thinking, and we can't possibly see another way to think, to look, to believe. And it's so easy to turn that part of the brain on, and it begins to open your paradigms up so you can begin to see things in a way that you hadn't seen them before, which is so much more helpful. So,
I loved your explanation, because, you know, being an entrepreneur and working from home, I love what I do, but I can find myself sometimes all of a sudden 10 hours later going, oh my God, you know, and I have had to, okay, sit down. I've had to say, stop, Lucy. You're not having enough fun in your life, you know, and I had to stop, and I can't, I'm one of these people that I have to have balance in my life. I'm an outside person. That's why I moved to Mexico. I love the warm weather. And, you know, now before, you know, like Maya has taught us, before I do anything with my calendar, I put in my tennis match. I put in my duplicate bridge stuff. And then I fit, you know, all the fun things. And then I fit everything around it.
I love that.
Because I can't stand it. I can't, otherwise I can't be me.
Yeah, you get kind of stuck in a rut. And I've talked to women, and they've said they don't even know what play means.
Wow.
And it's really simple. You go on Google Images and you search children at play, enter, and you scroll through photos until you find something that looks fun, and you try it, and you see it brings you to life. That's as easy as it gets to start to discover what's going to grow that part of your brain, but also what's going to help you discover yourself and bring yourself back to life, because that's one of the such key elements of healing, because we don't want to just move away from something. We always want to have something that's pulling us forward to the future and get a glimpse of what it's going to be like. It's a neuro-linguistic skill. Get a glimpse of what it's going to be like on the other side, so that we've always got that to move towards. Yeah.
You know, I mentioned Maya, and so I want to ask you why, you know, there are lots of life coaches out there. There are lots of business coaches out there. I know why I gravitated to Maya. Why did you choose Maya as a coach?
The first time I saw Maya live, and I didn't actually follow her for about a year, she was walking into a sweat lodge backwards, and she tripped over, and she was live. And then she stood up and laughed, and I'm like,
Maya.
Okay, I like that. This girl's got no pretenses, and I like that very much. And then I followed her. I followed her loosely I didn't really take part in anything. It was this other group.
Right.
And then when she started her program, Ignite Your Magnificence, in January of 2020, I jumped in then and have been with her ever since. But a lot of it was just because she doesn't pretend.
Right, exactly. And I met her, we were in the same program, the KBB program, which was the Knowledge of Business Blueprint program with Dean Graziosi. And I met her after I went through the course. There was an implementation lab that was supposed to take place in Arizona. It was March of 2020. It was the very first time that Dean Graziosi and Tony Robbins had to think differently, had to pivot. And the very, very first virtual event was the one where I met Maya. So that was March 2020.
Oh, nice.
And you know, I remember her coming up. It was during that implementation lab that she got this. She came to us that next morning and said, "I know what I'm going to call my program. Born. I'm born for this." And I remember that wonderful moment. And sure enough, and look at her go now. And so, yeah, so it was a joy when she invited me to one, I like Cantadora program. And then from there, you know, then I did several others, and here I am. And she's my coach, like she's your coach, and a wonderful, yeah, I mean, unusual person, unusual coach, who enjoys life, you know, doesn't take herself too seriously, but gets to the heart of things.
Yeah.
And the soul of things. So yeah. So now I know that you were in the group, I think last year, or just that you all were part of a book that came out.
Yes. Yes.
Could you tell us about that?
I'm trying to find I've got like 6 copies and none of them are beside me. I tidied up my office.
A little bit about that experience, and because now you are an author, you can call yourself an author.
Yes,
and a best-selling one too.
Yeah, it was an amazing experience. I mean, writing the story and then crystallizing it was really transformative, especially coming down to what is one of the core beliefs of your life. And my story is actually set 96 feet under the earth.
Wow.
In a cave in New Zealand with my son. So that's the setting of my story. And my belief is that your light is stronger than any darkness in your life. It was a life-changing day for me. And you know, so often we search and try and find light. Or we'll use affirmations. I'm not into affirmations. I actually feel that they're ineffective, but I'm light, you know. I'm enough. I'm trying not to get sidetracked with explaining affirmations and why they don't actually work and what the other option is. I'll leave that. I'm just going to get rid of that out of my brain so I don't get distracted. But the truth is that when we actually have the courage to sit in our darkness, which is so hard, it's so hard, especially when we have monsters in our darkness.
Right.
But when you learn to sit there, it's never as scary as you think it's going to be. Our light actually comes and finds us. We do not have to search anywhere for our light. If you sit in the darkness, the light will automatically shine, and it's the same for our spirits. It's the same for our souls. So my story is about the recovery journey of my grandfather raping me. And so that's what was in the book. And then in December, I went down to LA to the studio, got to deliver my story and be interviewed and hang out with everybody. And it was a really surreal experience. It was really fun. Yeah, the most beautiful, I mean, there's 44 of us featured in the book, and just the most unbelievably gorgeous stories, really transformative lessons. And yeah.
Oh, wow. So yeah, I've got goosebumps just thinking about how that would feel. I mean, that's really, so tell me, I think you have a new program that's coming out on February 1st and 2nd, I think. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this is I'm just hitting my 2-year anniversary of being eating disorder and bulimia free, and so I really wanted to celebrate it. Thank you.
Oh, that's so
And so one of the first steps in my journey, because I got a coach. I mean, I believe that it's almost impossible to recover without a coach because you
absolutely.
need somebody kicking you in the butt.
Mhm.
It wasn't quite enough for me, so I added a lot of my neurolinguistic stuff to it because I just wasn't getting where I needed to get. So what I'm going to be teaching next week is the first step that I took in my recovery journey, which was a game changer for me.
Okay.
And so I'm offering it free. So this is like the thing that I used, and I'm going to give the whole thing away. But it's not like this is what I did here. You do this, do what I did, and you'll succeed. What I'm actually
Mhm.
going to do over the 2 days. So it's next Tuesday and Wednesday, February 1 and 2,
Okay.
from 11 a.m. to 12 noon Pacific Standard Time. I'm going to work with every woman who shows up to help them design their own individual, unique menu that's right for them, because what's right for me is not right for
Absolutely.
you.
Yeah.
And there are keys you can use, which I'm going to go through on Tuesday, how to figure out what foods you need to include and
Okay.
what foods you need to remove just for the time being. There are many foods that I removed from my diet, not to restrict them, but because, our body has innate intelligence
Mhm. It does.
and our emotions have innate wisdom. And when we learn to put those two things together to craft a meal plan for ourselves, that's when we can start being successful. Yeah, so
Wow.
that's what I'm going to be taking everybody through next week, and everybody who signs up is going to get this sweet little gift from me. And then for everybody who actually shows up and participates, and there's going to be homework, I'm actually giving away 2 free coaching sessions.
Oh, wow,
So,
wonderful.
yeah.
So down below, I have the tickler. So if anybody wants to register for your workshop, it's https slash www.laurettesmith.com/f food. What is it? Food. It's coming around again. And I will be putting it after the interview, I'll be putting it in the comment below. So that's it. All you have to do is copy it.
Oh,
So
hang on.
laurettesmith.com/food
It's actually
slash
a meal planning workshop. I'll send you
food
this.
piece. Well, that's okay. We'll correct it
We'll
at
put it in
least.
below,
But if
yeah.
they needed to get you immediately, they can go to laurettesmith.com and contact
Yeah,
you there
it's right,
also.
and it's right up the top, or they can just contact me on Facebook. You can private message me, you can friend request me.
Right.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
So this is so exciting. I'm so excited for you. I mean, what's next for you? I mean, I know that we both are with Maya for a whole year,
yeah.
a few less months now, but what do you envision a
Okay,
year from now?
so my 100% passion goal is to hold energy retreats,
Oh,
because
wonderful.
I really, I mean, everything is energy, and energy is everything. And when you can work in somebody's energy, the shifts
Hmm.
change so much faster. And as a 7-year-old, I was working in energy with adults. So I've always been that way, always been very energetically and spiritually in tune and inclined, and have done many different forms of energy work over the years. And so that is my goal. I actually have a energy belief system program that I've been writing for about a year now. Really excited about that, which will culminate in just a really cool, really powerful retreat. Don't know where I'm going to hold it yet, but it's going to be amazing. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So we can look forward to that.
Mhm.
Well, I'm certainly looking forward to being on this journey with you because, I mean, it's exciting and there's nothing but great opportunities, to open up for us because the universe, all we have to do is believe that it is
Yeah.
so, and it is so.
Mhm.
And, we are meant to be abundant and we are meant to be joyful and loving and kind. And so I'm just loving my journey. So Laurette, is there anything? Okay, you know that I do these interviews to help women who may want to get online. They have knowledge, they have expertise. They're mostly women who are 60 plus, and maybe they're retiring. They don't want to retire, but they don't know what else to do. There's always that calling within us. We go, oh my God, what advice would you have for, anybody who is listening to this, who wants to start online, but doesn't know where to start, or who to trust even?
Yeah. So I actually believe, even though, we pay for coaching, I actually believe in using everything free online possible.
Right.
I didn't even have a website when I started in my business, right? I use Microsoft Mail Merge with Microsoft Outlook for my emails.
Why
Or I
not?
send emails individually. You don't
Yeah.
need a big email program until you get, until you get, say, over, I think it's over 150 contacts. You start having some issues with Microsoft Outlook. I would say if they're on Facebook, then one of the best ways to start is just start creating posts about what's on your heart, because as you
Great advice.
as you start speaking something, it internalizes. So this is what I taught to my kids given they were debaters, and it's actually the process of learning from the Middle Ages. It's called the trivium of learning. It's how I taught my kids, is that there's grammar, logic, and rhetoric, right? Grammar is when you are researching and you're recording, right? You're just in the learning process.
Right.
And that's like primary school, kindergarten through second, third, fourth grade, depending on a child's, intellectual curiosity and maturity. The next stage is logic, where you start relating that knowledge to your life, to somebody else's life, to the world. That's the logic stage, right? That's where it starts to become internalized, and it begins to change the way that you think. The third stage is rhetoric, which is the teenage years. And of course, as an adult, we go through all of these stages, very smoothly, but this is the way it develops inside a child. And that's rhetoric, where you can communicate something. The process of communication actually helps deepen the logic internalization to the point where it becomes who you are. It's not just something you say, it becomes who you are. And so just start practicing writing your message and see how it resonates with your friends. Start talking to your friends about what's on your heart and what's really important to you.
Right.
Close your eyes and see yourself standing in front of people, or standing on the beach, or standing alone, wherever you want to be, and listen. Give a speech of what's really important to you, and listen to what you hear yourself say. Feel it. Feel what you hear yourself say, and then write it down, or grab your phone and record it for yourself and listen back to it and begin to see what comes out, because that's one of the first things, is really honing our message and what it is that we truly believe that we want to offer. And that's a private internalization process, and then start speaking it to other people. But you don't need to buy,
Absolutely.
you do not need to buy big programs.
Yeah.
You don't.
Yeah. No.
There's so many. You don't even need a website.
No, I mean, it's almost obsolete, but actually it's a great advice. As figure out where you are right now, assess yourself, assess your thoughts,
and start speaking
your
to
feelings,
Yep.
and then I think one of the greatest questions to ask is, what would I love? What would I love now? Who would I love to be? Always ask that question. What would I love? Even when I go into restaurants, I never know. And so it's a question I ask myself. I never look at the price. What would I love, on this menu? And
Yeah.
I find that it's a very liberating question.
It is. It is. And at the same time, it's okay to do things that also provide for you. That, like, my husband is not necessarily in love with his job.
Right.
But we had children that went through private college. We had a mortgage. So
you're thankful, you're grateful.
I've been very blessed to be in the position where I haven't had to work. So I haven't had to work. I haven't had to earn a living. And so I've had the beautiful liberty of being able to ask myself that question. Not everybody else is in that same category.
Right.
And so it's not always one or the other. Sometimes it can be both. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I've just so enjoyed, listening to you, talking with you. It's so wonderful. And I'm sure that, I will put the information for your meal planning program. And then, of course,
I can't believe I gave you the wrong. I can see it
oh,
here.
that's okay. That's okay
Food-Peace
because
Experience. It's meal planning workshop. So
it's meal planning workshop.
I have so many landing pages on my website. It's my website has it's not ClickFunnels, but it has all that stuff
Oh,
in
yeah.
it because I have I have a budget program because I don't like spending a lot of money on things I don't need. Why do that, right?
So there's something else you can teach women. How
Yeah.
wonderful is that? Do you know how needed that is? I mean, unbelievable.
Oh, some of the programs out there are just ridiculously
Yeah,
expensive. It's criminal.
yeah,
Yeah.
they are.
It's
They are. Well,
yeah.
I'm going to correct that. Make sure that you send me the correct
I will
information.
as
I
soon as
will.
we're
I will
on.
put it in the in the comment below. And
Mhm.
and I just want to thank you for your time. I know how busy you are, and I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate the time. And the best of luck. And
Same to you. Same
thank
to
you,
you.
thank
I'm
you, thank
so
you.
glad we're on this journey together.
I am too. Okay. And for my audience, thank you for being here. Thank you for your support. And you know that if you are interested in figuring out how to start your business online, you can contact me and let me help you do that. Okay. Bye, bye, Laurette. For now, I want to say Laurette because I'm so French, and so
That's
goodbye,
what I get. Lorette is how you say it. It's just that
Laurette. Okay.
nobody else can say it like that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Bye for now. I'm just going to end the broadcast and we can chat a little.